Hello, my friend, and welcome to Securely Insecure, hosted by me, Johnny Seifert. This is the Celebrity Mental Health podcast where I say it's okay to not be okay. And this week, once again, I open up the Securely Insecure book club, where I look at the mental health themes behind the best novels that you need to buy right now. And if you love what I'm doing here on Securely Insecure and you want to support your favorite authors, go and buy their books where they're available because they're everywhere. And then on Securely Insecure, give a 5-star rating, a review, click the like button, and click that subscribe button. It's so important that we keep spreading the word. It's okay to not be okay. And let me tell you about my guest today. This week, the book I want you to read is The Gathering, which tells the story of the vampire colony where murders need to be solved with religion and cults at its core. So to talk about through the mental health themes of the book, I'm delighted to welcome to you, it's CJ Tudor. Hello, CJ.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, you can tell how much I loved your book, and I'm really sorry, but I don't know
I
if you
can
can see it's been
that's
everywhere. I don't know if that's a sign of a good thing. It's been in the jacuzzi,
that
it's
is
been in the bath.
definitely a good thing.
Is
I
that a
don't
good
like
thing?
people. It is people who have perfect books. They're not readers. I always say a good book is thumbed. The pages are creased. Maybe it's been dropped in a bath. Who knows? The spine's cracked. That is the sign, I think, of properly reading and enjoying a book. That's how all mine end up, if they're
Yeah, I think the
paperback as
spine
well.
has cracked a little bit, and you can see there's black marks. So it shows I have read your book from start to finish. And
It does.
I'll tell you a little
It does.
secret. So I got given a copy of your book a couple of months ago, and I thought, right, I'm going to take it on a cruise with me. And so what I did, I went on the cruise, and I thought, right, I'm going to go to the gym, and then I'm going to go to breakfast. But on my deck chair, I'm going to put my towel down, and I'm going to put the book. And then if I've put the book on top, no one will take the deck
I've
chair.
reserved my deck. Yeah, I've got my chair.
Someone stole your book. I know. You don't know what that
Shocking.
did to me. I was looking forward to it. And you know, when you planned in your head, right, I'm going to read this book now. I had no book. I was like, how could someone steal it? And I said to this American lady who
That's
took the sunbed,
awful.
did you just take a book? No, would you? Sorry.
You
So
can't trust
anyway,
these people on
you
cruises.
can't. So it's been a long time coming, but I absolutely love your books. The Chalkman a couple of years ago,
Thank
just
you.
the most incredible twist at the end. Let's talk about The Gathering first of all. What is The
Yes.
Gathering all about?
It's set in a world where vampires have always existed. I know, and people are aware of vampires, they're there, but it's a very uneasy coexistence. Basically, they haven't really posed a threat to humans for a long while and exist mostly on animal blood. But because of fear and superstition, they have been hunted and killed, and there's now only almost to extinction. There's now actually only a few remote colonies of vampires that live in sort of remote areas of the world, trying in a way to stay away from humans. And they're actually protected because there aren't many vampires left. So there is a law in place that protects them, and their colonies are protected, except if they pose a threat to human life. In which case, the colonies can be culled to protect humans. So, into this kind of world and environment, there's a small Alaskan town called Dead Heart, and a young boy is found brutally murdered, and all the blood has been drained from his body. And the inhabitants of Dead Heart, which is in Alaska, believe that it's the work of one of the vampires who live in a nearby colony in an abandoned mine in the mountains. And Detective Barbara Atkins, who was a specialist, she's a forensic vampire anthropologist, is called to the town to basically determine whether this killing is a vampire killing, and then she can give a go-ahead for the colony to be culled because they pose a threat to the town, or whether there's something else going on here. And of course, there's something else going on here. And as she dives into this small remote town with the help of the sheriff, who there was a previous killing 25 years ago that was similar. So the retired detective involved in that case becomes involved, and they find that this small town has a lot of very dark secrets. The more they delve into it, and it was a lot of fun to write. It's because it's a very isolated setting in Alaska, which is a great setting for the book. We actually went out there for a week for research, and this idea that we've got this colony of vampires and these townsfolk, and they hate it. It's a very uneasy existence. So it was an interesting way to also look about how we treat people who are other to us by using the vampires as kind of like an example of that. Because as far as the townsfolk are concerned, they hate these vampires. There's sort of religious overtones. They're the spawn of Satan. They should be exterminated. You can't expect good God-fearing people to live with these creatures nearby. But then there's the idea that actually the vampires themselves are quite persecuted. And so it was an interesting way of using genre and a mystery, because it's essentially a murder mystery at its heart, to look at sort of how we treat people and the divisions in society as well. And all of those things were quite interesting to look at, but using a genre and a murder mystery as well. So it was fun to write. I always wanted to write a vampire story, but I knew I had to bring something new to it because it has kind of, to use a bad pun, been done to death, really.
But it's interesting as well because with your background in TV before you got into writing, you're all about telling the story. So not just putting a pen to paper, writing a story for beginning, middle, and end. It's actually going, well, who are underrepresented, who are not being spoken about, what's their story, and obviously asking the question why. And so it's doing that why, but with the great narratives that books tell of a murder mystery, and then what you do
Yeah.
so brilliantly is bringing religion into it. And then
Yes.
you've got a really nice narrative of kind of the CJ Tudor at home and your background versus kind of the book background which we're now in, and then also going, well, what's the why? Why are we doing this?
The great thing about sort of crime and genre, such as genre, because I kind of cross crime a little bit with horror, is that you can tackle quite important issues sometimes, but you kind of you cloak them in this interesting, exciting, hopefully sort of mystery, murder mystery. But you can talk about bigger issues. As I say, you can talk about divisions in society. How we treat people who are different to us. How we can very easily become set in our own camps and how easy that can cause hatred and division. I think that's very relevant to society at the moment. I think more and more people are hunkering down. This is my camp, this is my people, and these people who are different to us, in some way, we don't like them for these reasons, and we surround ourselves with like-minded people with an echo chamber. And I think that's very dangerous place to be because we close our minds to other opinions, and I don't think it's good for anybody to have that division. This is my people, you are other, therefore I don't like you, I hate you because you're other to me. And we kind of look at all of that in the book, but I say it's wrapped up with vampires and a murder mystery. It's an interesting way to sort of look at those issues we have in society as well.
And it's also interesting the way that in society we've always got ideologies and we've got leaders. And with your books, especially, there's always a religious leader. So if we're talking, if I'm talking about the Jewish community, I'll talk about, Jews in Northwest London, and I'll focus on the ground of the society. Whereas what you do, which is really interesting, is that you go, right, we're going to look at Christianity in each book, and it's always going to be a reverend or a priest or someone with a bit of power to them. So
Yes.
let's strip it back a bit. What does religion mean to you? And why is religion important to bring into your books? Even though it's very small and it's never the focus, but there's always an underlying theme throughout your books.
I know. I have noticed that actually. I mean, it was very relevant in this book with the idea of the vampires being the spawn of Satan and devils and that type of thing. So we do have this very charismatic female preacher in the town who is quite mysterious herself, and particularly in America as well. The kind of that very far right religious kind of evangelical kind of religion, which is very what I would call hardcore religion. It's not quite the same as the kind of like cup of tea and cake kind of Christianity you kind of get in the UK generally. And that was interesting to examine. I mean, I'm not religious. I'd say I'm agnostic.
Are you
Stroke
not?
atheist.
That's so
No, I'm
interesting.
not
I
religious
thought
at
you
all.
would be.
No, but I do find it fascinating. I find it fascinating in a way that I can understand why people kind of have religion and spiritual belief. I'm of people's individual spiritual belief. Believe whatever you like, as long as it does no harm to anybody else, which is where I stand upon it. But I find organized religion a strange beast and quite a difficult one, because I think, unfortunately, it does more than anything provoke division again. Our religion is better than your religion. Our God is better than your God. Ours is the only true God. And unfortunately, it does, create division between people. You mustn't do this. These people are not good. This person not good because they love another man or love another woman. There is unfortunately that kind of thing in religion, and I find there's also a lot of hypocrisy in it. I'm not saying there aren't people in religious people who try their best to do good. I really do believe there are, and I don't like to come down on one side or the other. I like to be even-minded. But I do think there's often a lot of hypocrisy in it, that as long as I pray and confess my sins to my God, then I can kind of get away with not being a nice person a lot of the time. Whereas I kind of come from the background of like, I'm not expecting any reward when I die. I just think I should try and be a kind of a nice person now, for no other reason than, I should try and be a nice person. But I find all the things tied up with religion very fascinating as well, and how sort of people can be brainwashed as well to believe certain things. So there's lots of aspects of it that I find interesting, and I think I tackle it in a different way in all of my books. I say it's particularly relevant in The Gathering because it really plays into that. I think that kind of very far right evangelical religious movement that's particularly prevalent in the US, not so much in this country, but particularly in the US, and how religion can be used again to stir up those divisions, and in a way which was what it should not be used for, but to stir up hatred to an extent.
Well, and not to get political, but obviously what's going on in the world right now that is that literally. And I think it's very interesting because you've got to have that separation,
Yeah.
and I've had lots of conversations since October the 7th of being Jewish and then
Well,
Zionism and
yes.
Israel and what is that
Yeah.
link. And I've always said I'm a Zionist and I love Israel, etc. And then I'm thinking, well, hold on, I don't know enough information. If anyone asks me, the truth is I don't know enough. I've not done
And
the
I think it's
research.
okay
I
to
can't
say
give it to
that.
him.
Yeah.
But it took
I
a
mean,
long time to be able to say that.
it is interesting because I was talking to my husband about this, and again about the Israel Palestine, the situation, the war, the attacks, and I said, I think it is okay to go. Do you know what? I actually don't know enough about the history, about the situation. My overriding opinion is that all of it is awful. It's all terrible. I
From a
don't want to see anything
humanistic approach,
from a
which we both
humanistic
are.
point of view.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to go. I can't. I would not argue in too much detail on anything because I don't know enough about it. And I think it's okay to kind of say that sometimes because everybody has an opinion of something. And sometimes people's opinions are quite ill informed. People have read something here or read something there, or I'm coming down on this side because my echo chamber says I should feel this way without perhaps knowing enough about it. And I think that's sometimes the danger of social media as well. Echo chambers aren't helpful. You need to speak to people with different opinions because you don't learn otherwise. How do you ever learn unless you speak to people with different opinions? And I think that's part of the problem we sometimes do have with society, and then social media, of course, feeds that even more.
Oh, massively. And the way
Mm.
clickbait news is now, especially, it all fits in. And that's why I always say, ask me about Love Island and Married at First Sight, and do I believe in those relationships? To me, that's more important. I know there's a war going on, but what's going on Love Island, I can relate to a little bit more.
I think we need those things sometimes, don't we? As well,
Well, it's switching off, isn't it?
because otherwise you can just feel kind of despairing and ultimately, you kind of go, well, what can I do? You can feel quite helpless in
Yeah.
any situation where there's a war or conflict and innocent people are dying, and you see images of horror from either side, and you go, this is just, come on, we're human beings. Can we please stop this? Surely there has to be some kind of solution. But like everything, it's very complex. I
That,
certainly don't have the answers, and I certainly don't know enough about it all. So certainly on social media, I tend to try and not get involved in political discussions, and because I feel that I can offer some opinions, but on certain things I don't think I'm well informed enough, and I'm not just going to go in there and give an ill-informed opinion. And I just also sometimes, because social media can be quite a poisonous place and definitely not good for mental health when you get involved in those things, I try to stay on book stuff, nice stuff, fun things, because that's just it's a safer space, really, I think.
well, let's look at your book, The Gathering. Let's look at the complexities behind it. And let's look at some of the quotes of what you've written in there. And let's see how you adapt to those mental health things
Okay.
in there. So we're going to start with page 75. And first line says, at 80, you want to live forever. At 80, you're glad that everything had its time. So where you are in life, CJ, with all the success you've had with your books and with your TV career,
Yes.
where are you in life at the moment? Are you content where you are? Are you wanting more? Or do you have regrets that you didn't do certain things earlier on in life?
I think I'm really, really fortunate. I'm 52 now. And so, I'm at that stage of having less years ahead than I probably have behind me now, which is that interesting place to be. But I'm really happy. I'm actually pretty content. I mean, I think I'm very fortunate that I did a lot of things late in life. Like I wasn't published till I was 46. I didn't have my daughter till I was 41. And so I was lucky that I had a really varied kind of career, and I've done lots of different kind of jobs and things. I say I've spent a long time in life trying not to have a proper job. So I've done all sorts of stuff. I did some TV stuff. I've done voiceovers. I've worked in radio script writing. I've worked in advertising. I started off working on a local newspaper. I've been a dog walker. I've done a variety, a wide and varied career, and I'm lucky enough that each of those things has given me lots of different crazy experiences. And I've had quite a turbulent time in my 20s. I kind of probably didn't sort of settle down in life a little bit till I hit my 30s. But I feel I've had a pretty full life. And I think, including bad stuff, including the crappy stuff as well. And I think that's good. So I've got to a place where I don't think there's this stuff. There's always stuff you wish you'd done. I wish in my early 20s I'd gone traveling. I wish I'd done that, before you sit down and have responsibility. But I'm also lucky enough now to be in a more comfortable position that actually we can go and travel and have some nice holidays and things and do it in a bit more comfort, which is also nice. So yeah, I'm pretty in a pretty good position. I count myself, I think the older you get, I think the more grateful you are for small things, because I think the older you get, the more you lose people. I lost my dad a couple of years ago, and that was a tough time. And you become more conscious that my mum's 85 now, she's getting a lot older, and even friends, you lose people around your own age, which really, starts to make you reflect upon your mortality. So just, things like being grateful to go out and walk the dog and enjoy a nice day and sunshine and looking at the lovely countryside are more important than ever. And I'm lucky to do something that I love for a job. So, I am content and I'm very grateful for all the things that I've got, my beautiful daughter and things, some things that I thought I wouldn't have, because I was 41 when I had Betty. So I thought that boat might have sailed, but I was very fortunate to have her at that age. So, yeah, I think I'm in a pretty good place, but you never know what life's going to throw at you. So I think it's always important to say I'm in a good place today. You never know what tomorrow might bring, but, hopefully there'll be a tomorrow and bring it on.
But it's interesting as well, the fact that, in your 40s, so many life-affirming moments happened, whether it was your daughter, the books, your father, and, your sense of belonging to the world. And, I'm 31, and so I'm always thinking, oh, my God, everyone's done this in their 20s.
So young.
And then I don't feel young. I feel like, oh, my God, I'm so old. I can't believe it. And I do that weird thing. And I don't know if you've ever done it with you going, well, and I know this is going to sound so morbid, but I think you'll get it. It'll be like, I'm never going to have a 75th wedding anniversary because I've already passed that milestone already. And I'm not going to get this and that. And you're like, I'm not going to see my kid be 100 years old, which I know, obviously, I'm not ever. No one does. But, those things.
It is those things that occur to you. I was talking about writing books the other day, and I was like saying, maybe when I'm on my 30th book or whatever, I thought, oh my God, will I be alive to write 30 books? Possibly not.
But if you are, you're going to do that big party in the big hotel, which is going to, but it's that weird thing that, we always look at these life affirming moments and these decades and how the decades define us. Why do you think your 40s are where you were given the chance to have those highs and those lows?
It's interesting, isn't it? It's like, I think I call myself a really late developer, I think because my 20s were a very turbulent time, and I didn't really sort of get some normality, I think, in my life and some stability until my 30s. Sort of, I met my husband when I was just before I was 30. And then I think that gave me some stability. I finally had sort of a good, more stable relationship. Part and parcel of that, I think when I hit my 40s, I kind of think I was doing a lot of catching up. I didn't start writing till my mid 30s. So I think a lot of things that perhaps some other people do younger, I didn't start kind of knuckling down to do till my 30s anyway.
And is that okay? Is that okay to start?
I think that is okay.
There's a lot of pressure of why is it not happened to me
yet?
yet?
There is so much pressure. And, I could look back and go, God, it would have been lovely if I'd had these great things like the book stuff and things happen earlier. If I'd had my daughter earlier, perhaps we'd have had another child, because I had her later, we didn't. But I am quite fatalistic about stuff. I'm like, these things happen. They happen when they, do, perhaps for a reason. I always say, funny enough, I think, I always used to think that having a child would stop me doing the things I wanted to do. But if I hadn't had Betty, I wouldn't have written The Chalk Man. It kind of wouldn't have happened, or maybe it would have done in a different way. But I always think, if I hadn't had Betty, if someone hadn't given her the box of chalks for her second birthday, that wouldn't have sparked that idea, and that wouldn't have kicked off, the lovely career that I have now, where I get to write books. So, I mean, my 40s, I think my 40s were great, and then they weren't so great. Everybody has ups and downs. I lost my dad in 21, just off the back of COVID and everything, and that was a really crappy time. I was writing a book that I've been trying to write during lockdown. And like lots of people, I think, I was struggling perhaps and I didn't realize it, and then lost my dad. And that book, it just didn't work and I hated it. And then my editors kind of gave me lots of notes and I realized that it wasn't working. And I just had to ditch the book. I had to say, I can't fix this book. I hate this book. It's come to represent everything that's crappy that's happened this last year. And I can't go back to it. And I need a break. I need to do something different. I need to put this book to one side. So we had to skip a publishing year. But then that was when I wrote The Drift, because I was quite passionate about that idea, and that was great because that really sort of kick-started a slightly different direction for my writing, and The Drift's been really successful, and so it was a positive thing came out of it. But at the time I felt like an absolute failure because I'd had to say I can't put this book out there, I can't fix this book, it's not good enough, and please can you give me the space to kind of do something different. But I think, we all have those ups and downs. And sometimes you don't talk about them because social media and, you tend to present the positive, don't you? I remember sharing that experience with that book and how, I'd had to, bin it essentially and go to my publishers. And I got such a response from so many other people and writers saying, I had a book that failed and I was feeling, I felt depressed. And people that contact me privately as well saying, actually, I had a crap time because I lost my mum and this and the other. But you don't see that. Because nobody shares the rubbish stuff sometimes on social media. They don't, like, people don't share their failures sometimes, do they? We all share that, isn't it great? I've done this and everything's wonderful. But actually, the greatest response you get sometimes is when you do share your failures. I think sometimes, we could all be perhaps a little bit more honest, and rather than just always have to present the happy, shiny face.
Well, I spoke to CL Taylor about this because obviously, CJ isn't your actual name, it's Kaz.
No.
But you've kind of got the CJ version of you, which is what's presented to us of your book. But then you've
Yes.
got the private Kaz that can have those emotions. It's interesting because in your book, you actually talk about this in a really weird way. And it's on page 223.
Yeah.
And you say, and this is complete, I presume, coincidence, unless it meant it. But you said, people often talk about the stages of grief, denial, pain, acceptance, but few mention the fourth, terminal, those for whom there would never be any recovery. So with what you've just spoken about,
Yes.
do you think those type of traumas that happened to your father or any other traumas have held you back in life of pushing yourself forward because of those traumas?
I think losing a parent's obviously a really difficult thing. And I think it knocked me more than I realised, because I think I was busy with trying to make sure my mum was okay, because I'm an only child. So trying to make sure that she was all right was a big consideration. And I don't think I really perhaps took time to think about how it sort of affected me. But I don't want this to sound callous. I think losing a parent is awful. You do get on and move through it, because obviously I have my own family, my own daughter. I can't imagine how anybody gets on, now I have Betty, losing a child. I think that must be, that's kind of, the wrong order of life, isn't it? You kind of know to an extent you will grow up, and your parents will grow and you will lose your parents, but that is kind of the natural order of life. The idea of losing a child for me is, all parents try not to think about it. We have to live in denial, because the idea is just too terrifying and awful to ever to contemplate, because I know it would absolutely break me, and I don't know how people do manage to go on sometimes. And I think I don't say it's easier if you have other children, of course it's never easier, but of course when it's your only child as well, you haven't got other children you need to think about. They're sort of your everything. And I think that type of grief, which is what we talk about in the book, the parents who've lost their son, is perhaps the most difficult thing, that to get by. I don't think you do recover. I think you don't recover from grief, do you? You learn to live with it, if you can live with it, because it isn't something perhaps some grief you can't recover from. It's always there. It's never going to go away. You just have to somehow carve out some kind of life living with it. That's the most difficult sort of thing to do. I think that's kind of what I'm sort of thinking about with the book. How you get over that, the worst thing that could ever happen to you as a parent.
Well, on page 170, you said, linking to this, you better get used to killing, Babs. Ain't no one gonna wipe your ass your whole life. We're fighting for our survival here, and this family don't carry no passengers. And as you're talking about survival and those moments that you're going, I'm at my lowest, what am I going to do to pick myself up? What were your coping mechanisms during that time and afterwards to focus on your mental health, to put yourself first? Apart from obviously going, well, I need to take a step back from the book, but in everyday practice, what were you doing for that survival when you're in that fight or flight mode?
It's interesting, isn't it? I think because I was very much preoccupied with looking after my mum at that time, and that was kind of a distraction, and of course I had my own family to look after as well. So those things kind of, I say distracted me, but I think eventually you always have to come down and deal with it. And I think unfortunately one of the worst things about losing anyone is you always think, could I have done things differently? And I think that's one of the worst things that we do to ourselves when we lose someone, because you always think. Dad was in a care home for 2 years before he died. And one of the biggest regrets, of course, is during COVID, we couldn't see him often enough, and that unfortunately meant, for the last year of his life, I think the first time I hugged him in a year was on the day that we lost him. And that's a horrible thing. That's something that a lot of people had to deal with as well. But I think you have to be kind to yourself, and lots of things you will go over. I think particularly if you lose a parent, you'll go over, should I have said this? Should I have done the other? You'll go back to things that happened years ago that you regret happening, and in arguments you've had. And I think you just have to accept that is part of life. That even the people you love the most, you don't say you love them perhaps every day. You will argue with them. We're all human beings, and you shouldn't beat yourself up about those things, because they loved you as well, regardless of those ups and downs, in the same way that you loved them. And I think you have to accept that, know that you've always tried to do your best, but of course you will have regrets. I have a regret that we weren't with Dad when he died, because, Dad was was in the care home. We were only supposed to have limited time with him anyway because it was during COVID. So we'd been there sort of longer than we were. We had to wear the masks and all that stuff. And I was very conscious of looking after mum. And of course, you don't know when you're going to lose someone. We thought we were going to lose dad a couple of days before, but he was, hanging on in there, bless him. And, we had to make a decision. Do I take mum home? Should we stay here the night? Mum needs to get back and rest. And eventually we made the decision that, not knowing if dad might be with us the next day and we would come back, that I took mum home. And actually we lost him a couple of hours later. But, you make these decisions. You don't know what size the right decision to make, but you make the right decision at the time. And I think that's for mental health. You have to not beat yourself up about things that happened in the past. I've had lots of ups and downs in mental health. My worst time was probably in my 20s. And I think because I had a really rough time in my 20s, I'm sort of better at dealing with things now. In a way, I've learned a lot from how not to deal with things. And I sort of know my own mind and my own mental health a lot better. And I can recognise signs where, things aren't working quite as well. And it's important to know that. I think it's important to recognise, what you need to do if you're going down a bit of a downward spiral, and things that can help you get out of that. And I've been fortunate enough to go through, I say, a rough time in my 20s and come out the other side and know the things that I need to do to look after myself now. Unfortunately, losing someone, the worst thing is we all go over those regrets, but you can't. You've got to not do that. I think you have to look forward and know that you did the best you could, which is all any of us can do.
Absolutely, absolutely. The final quote is from page 111. And Bab says to Mr. Mowlem, "You got any tattoos, Mr. Mowlem? Most people do these days." You've obviously got lots of tattoos. I'm very interested in the one on your right arm with a quote on it. Do you mind sharing what the quote says and why you got it on there?
Yes, the devil was an angel once. It's a quote from actually that I found that I used in The Drift. The devil was an angel once, which is quite relevant to that book about, basically, because kind of the whole feel of that book really is, we can all start off as the worst people can start off as good people sometimes. I'm a big believer in, nobody's kind of generally born an evil person. That a lot of people that even do really bad things, there's a set of circumstances and events that lead to that. And that was very, very much the theme of The Drift. And I thought it was a nice quote, and that's why I ended up having it as a tattoo. Most of my tattoos are related to the books in some way, or my stories in some way or another. But I'm going to have another one tomorrow related to The Gathering.
And what's it going to say on it?
This one's going to be another image, because I've got a skull here that relates to sort of the chalk man. I've got a chalk man there. Some of these tattoos relate to the short stories. That relates to the Burning Girls. I'm having a screaming vampire skull.
Oh, oh God, Cass. Oh, got the shivers already. And that's not even before the needles have gone in.
Oh, so yeah, that's tomorrow. You see, I'm committed to the book. Some people they do, like, I don't know, they do pens and things like that to promote their books. Me, I get a tattoo.
I'm not even going to make a joke that I just thought in my head that they're going to slice away bits of your body after and go, "Here's the book with the tattoo." Sell that on eBay.
Human skin, yeah.
Oh, CJ, I can't thank you enough. Your book, The Gathering, is out to buy now. Go and buy it. Also, go and buy The Chalkman, because it's one of the best books I've ever read. My absolute thanks to CJ for being part of the Circadian Skid Book Club.
Thank you so much.
I love speaking to you, and I love authors, and I love books. So there are authors in the Circadian Skill Library of people including Jeff Murray, C.L. Taylor, Amanda Prowse, Nicola Gill, Dale Parks, Jane Valentine Weaver, and many, many more. Looking at the mental health themes around their novels. If you enjoy Circadian Skill, please give a 5-star rating, click the thumbs up, click the subscribe button, and let's keep spreading the word. It's okay to not be okay on social media at Circadian Skill Podcast on Instagram, plus at Johnny Seifert on X, on Instagram, and on TikTok with 92 at the end, so at Johnny Seifert 92. Where can people find you, CJ?
They can find me on Twitter, CJ Tudor Author, and on Facebook and on Instagram, all under the same thing, CJ Tudor Author. I'm actually CJ Tudor on Twitter, but yeah, you can find me on those things.
Oh, amazing. And obviously her book, The Gathering, is on Amazon now. Go and buy it. Thanks so much for listening to Skin Insecure. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.